Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we're reacting to the Saiyan class hierarchy explained, because I've always wondered, like, when you think about it, it's obviously not power, or at least to an extent, because, like, Bardock would have been technically a low-class Saiyan, right? I think so, I might be wrong, so, like, don't, like, completely get me wrong that. But my point is, Vegeta, for example, is not the most powerful, and if he was king, I feel like it's more of a royal family rather than the most powerful. Like the Viltrumites, for example. I feel that's more the most powerful if you look at people like Thrag and Omni-Man, very high-ranking positions. So yeah, let's just jump straight in. And as always, the original video will be in the description down below, so make sure you check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and leave a suggestion on a future video for me to react to, or a game you want me to play, or whatever. Let's just jump straight in.
Vegeta calls himself a super elite, but what does that mean? How is Saiyan...
Yeah, and these days, as much as I rock with Vegeta, like, Vegeta's my dog. I'm not gonna lie, I love Vegeta. Big fan, favorite character. But super elite, dude. Yeah, you are super elite compared to, like, an average fighter, but compared to Goku, you're always just... Yeah, that's enough said.
Society actually structured, and where did everyone rank? Essentially, what was the Saiyan hierarchy? One of the major themes of the Saiyan arc is how fundamentally different the ideals of...
Not even just the Saiyan arc. Throughout all of DBZ, I feel like he was like, oh, how could a low-class Saiyan do this? I'm Prince Vegeta. Nowadays, he's like, oh, yeah, that's just Goku. He'd just be doing stuff. Or he doesn't say Goku. He said, that's just Kakarot. He'd just be doing stuff.
Vegeta, a so-called super elite prince...
Vegeta, though, I will say, in Super at least, Vegeta has realized Goku's the main character, and he's accepted that. And I really appreciate that.
Are in contrast to Goku, a low-class warrior who was sent away because he was born into a lower class. So what makes them so different? Well, put yourself in the shoes of a Saiyan. When you're first born, you're immediately scanned for your power level. This one number will determine nearly the entirety of your life going forward.
Really? Okay, I didn't know that. And also, you know, I get their premise, but my biggest thing is with Goku. So nobody has trained as much as him, which, as we saw, they trained a bunch. And it's not really friendship, because Goku doesn't get powerful off the power of friendship, because it's all rage and emotion. And you can't tell me that Saiyans weren't feeling emotion like Goku does. He barely understands emotion. He's like a child.
No pressure, right? You only have a few paths.
Just ask his children.
Here. Either your power level is high enough to be chosen.
A baby's battle power is measured as soon as they are born. If their number yada 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 immediately raises combatant candidates. Ooh, Kiritoriyama, rest in peace.
As a warrior from the very start, or it's not. You're then left in an incubator to develop over time, where your power level could potentially...
On the other hand, yada yada yada. I'm not reading
grow
that.
A little bit more.
If
in
you want to read it,
case,
read it.
He was developing very slowly, so much so that he spent 3 whole years in the incubator, couldn't even speak, and remained with a pretty low...
So then was Bardock a high-class Saiyan? That's interesting.
Power level. This will also determine what class you're labeled as.
Again, I don't remember all of Z. I've seen a lot of it, but I don't remember it all. So, like, if this was explained or whatever, I easily could have missed it. And like I said, I watch Super, and as much as Super gets hate, and by the way, if you hate on Super, just shush. I love Super. I love the animation. I love the story. And yeah, I get it wasn't the greatest anime of all time. But that's not what I watch Dragon Ball for. I watch Dragon Ball for crazy powers that don't really make sense and explosions. And I got a lot of that in Super, and I really respected that. And I got top-tier characters like Beerus and Champa, who won my heart in the Tournament of Power. And all you Champa haters out there, shush. I get a lot of respect for Champa because I know I'm never going to see these characters again, because it's just never going to happen. They're not going to bring characters like Hit back. I'd love them to. But like when Champa was like, oh, well, he just got lucky. Well, I respected Champa a lot for that. And, you know, I also, say what you will, I didn't really like the whole, pretty much anyone on Universe 6's team, or I mean 7's team, whatever number that Champa's universe is from. I didn't really like them because, like, when you think about it, the Saiyans were getting oh, back tingles. Like, what in the thing? You had to see your friend die back in my day. Now you could just have a tingly back? I don't know what that is, but that's just some wild stuff right there.
Really low power will become engineers, butchers, some could even become scientists or butlers to the king. These are part of the non-combatant class, but the majority of those low-powered Saiyans will instead become infiltration babies. This is exactly what Goku was going to be chosen as while developing in the pod. A Saiyan baby who was so weak that society saw him as disposable. Goku, or rather Kakarot, was supposed to go to Earth, wipe out its population.
Well, Raditz was... He had to be, like, relatively big, right? Because, like, when you think about it, I feel like your average Saiyan was probably weaker than Goku and Z. They had to be. Like, when you... Because, for example, Vegeta was super powerful compared to your average Saiyan. However, he did not, like, he wasn't even, like, top in the Frieza Force ranks. He was on that one dude that he blew up. So I just don't know. The power scaling's very weird with Saiyans, I feel like, especially like what we know of their planet. Like, I wish Saiyans were treated more like Viltrumites instead of, oh, they were a warrior race, but they didn't do much warrioring. I guess that's a word. I don't know.
And return home, or die trying. It didn't really matter to the Saiyans either way. These infiltration babies have a really low survival rate, and while yes, Goku's planet was chosen by his father, Bardock, to save him from
I also got a question. Like, with Akira Toriyama passing away, like I said, rest in peace, I know they're not going to end the Dragon Ball franchise. I actually read something somewhere where they actually literally can't because it'll hurt Japan's economy so much. I would love them to pick up Super and just stop caring. So, like, the biggest thing, I know I'm just kind of yapping, and I just love to yap about things I enjoy, so shush. But my point is, I'd love to them for stop caring about, like, a major story. Give us more of, like, I guess you can't say, like, fan service, because I really don't know what that word means. A lot of people portray it to weird stuff, like, I don't know, weird anime. But my thing is, I would just more like to see characters like Hit, big things like the Tournament of Power. I would rather see things like that don't really, like, necessarily have an amazing story like Z did, but just has some fun, genuinely. Kind of like, I'm forgetting the name. Daima. Daima was a lot of fun, and I wish they would treat Super more like that and release more of it, if that makes any sense.
Frieza, he was still going to be sent away somewhere to conquer anyways, though his power was likely just high enough to be expected to survive, since when Raditz arrives on Earth, he acts pretty surprised when he realizes that his brother hadn't killed all the humans, even with a lower than usual power level. I should also note that Saiyans don't train. Most of them, even the low-powered ones, are now...
I did not know that. I thought they would all train. Well, I guess Vegeta, he was... Yeah, he didn't look like he was training. You know who looked like they were training? Nappa. What a man.
Naturally born with battle instincts, but there were special cases where some would get special training. On the other hand are those Saiyans whose power level was high enough from the start or after a bit of development in the incubator to be seen as upper-class fighters. Of course, the most obvious example of this is Vegeta, but instead I want to talk about someone a little weird. I want to use Raditz as an example of a Saiyan who was not shot off into space as a baby to die. Raditz gets a ton of flack in the Dragon Ball fandom for being, well, Raditz.
I was killed by Piccolo.
Yeah, and that's before he has like a quick time on his special beam cannon. Like nowadays he could shoot it off in about 10 seconds flat at most. Back in the day, 45 minutes, that's just what it was.
But he's actually a lot more impressive than people give him credit for. According to Akira Toriyama, Raditz was determined at birth to be an upper-level.
Raditz was an upper-level warrior assigned to the same group as Nappa as a proper combatant. Before long, Vegeta was added to that group too. Okay.
Fighter, meaning his power level was high enough.
That's weird. I didn't know Raditz would be older than Nappa, especially if Raditz was his brother, I find
To
that
skip
strange.
the whole prove yourself as an infiltration baby step, he was placed in Nappa's squad, a group Vegeta would later join. So think about this for a second. Vegeta, the Saiyan prince, ended up on a team that Raditz was already
Nappa with hair, W-Mans.
a part of. Maybe Raditz wasn't such a joke after all. Now here's where things get a little complicated. Toriyama once said, Vegeta is the prince, and so he has a higher position due to his strength. But Raditz and Nappa have equal status. Let that sink in. Raditz and Nappa were considered equals. But wait,
Ain't no way. And I know what he's about to say is power scale, but wasn't Nappa like the royal trainer to Vegeta? If I remember right?
didn't Nappa call himself an elite in the original manga? Well, more recently, Toriyama has clarified that there were only two true elites, King Vegeta and Prince Vegeta, with around 10 middle-class Saiyans, including Nappa, right under them. So if Nappa and Raditz have equal status, this could potentially mean
I find this interesting because if I heard Bardock is on the same level as, and if we're judging purely off strength, Bardock is the same level as King Vegeta. Like I said, I might need to watch the movie. I'm missing out on a lot here.
that Raditz is a middle-class Saiyan on
I haven't seen any of the Dragon Ball movies except the newer adaptations.
the lower end. So in my mind, Raditz was born to a low-class family, but determined to be strong enough at birth to be made into a warrior right away, and could have possibly performed well enough to be considered a middle-class Saiyan. With that being said, this is debated. Other things like the Daizenshu and even Dokkan Battle call Raditz a low-class Saiyan. I've also seen people say that the wording of the quote could just mean that since Vegeta is the prince, he's above the two of them and they're really nothing compared to him, rather than a literal ranking. Saiyan Society
Yeah, because he says super elite and Nappa was an elite.
he wasn't entirely rigid. Toriyama explained that Saiyans could move up the food chain if their battle power grew. In Raditz's case, his power level as an adult really wasn't that particularly impressive, with some sources saying 1,200, 1,500, or even
Yeah, but think about it. 1,500. Wait, that doesn't make too much sense. Because if he was so powerful, he 1v2'd Goku and Piccolo. And Nappa, if he's at 4,000, all right, we're doing some math here, guys. Unless this is right before, like right after the training, maybe? Even still, Piccolo got fodderized by him.
1,600. So I'm not sure if I entirely buy that he's a middle-class Saiyan, but if he'd push himself harder, if their race wasn't destroyed, maybe he could have climbed to the middle class officially. Maybe the powers that be really did see potential in him. But here's where the divisions of the hierarchy become even clearer, because no matter how impressive Raditz was, in Vegeta and Nappa's eyes, he was always a low-class Saiyan.
I'll start things off. You shouldn't get too ahead of yourself.
Well, to be fair, like, just so you guys know, this guy is actually the most powerful character in all of Dragon Ball. He let himself die because he actually, some say it's a fan theory, and I heard some Dragon Ball creators, but we have never seen Nappa and Jiren in the same room. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. They're both bald. Interesting, right?
Raditz, so pathetic.
In essence, while there was a class hierarchy depending on power, it seems like what class your family belonged to also really mattered when it came to your societal treatment. Like in Tree of Might, where no matter how insanely strong both Kakarot and Turles are, Turles is still calling them both low-class Saiyans. So I'll just let you decide in the comments. Is Raditz a low-class Saiyan or a middle-class Saiyan born to a low-class family? All this is to say, Saiyans were only equal at the very second they were born, and then were quickly judged, labeled, and treated differently as soon as that scouter read their power level. Now that we've explored how systems work, let's look at the overall structure. At the very bottom, or really outside of the actual pyramid, are the non-combatants. Engineers, scientists, butchers, and beats from Dragon Ball Super Broly. These could be really far removed from our normal perceptions of Saiyans, to the point where Beats says he's never actually been an Ozaru in his entire life. Some of these
Okay, thing about great apes, and I've always wondered this, like, if they always, like, turn at the moon, And I'm sure there's some talks about it, but when you think about it, every time the moon shows up, are they all just a bunch of gray apes destroying their city? I hope not. That just seems unhealthy.
Saiyans were trained with weapons, like beats with a ray gun. Then there's the actual fighters, with the bottom of the barrel being the low-class Saiyans. These would be Kakarot, Bardock, Leek, anyone who's labeled as a low-class Saiyan in Dokkan really. Most Saiyans belong here, with a few thousand. The Daisenshu claims that the average power level of the Saiyans here is 1,500, and that a lot of them tend to look alike.
I hate when people act like... So, I have a big problem with people just glazing people just because they like the character, like Bardock. They're like, oh, well, he was Super Saiyan. Yeah, meh, meh. No, he wasn't. I don't care what your favorite fan movie, your favorite non-canon source says about it. He wasn't a Super Saiyan. Because if he was, he would have destroyed Frieza Force. But not even talking about that. It's just that in general. I see so much like... Here's a great one. Naruto, people love to say Fugaku and Minato. They were always like, oh, Fugaku Uchiha. If you didn't know, that's Sasuke's dad. And they're like, he was on the same level as Minato, which is stated. Yes, he is on the same level. And they're like, oh, so he was the Shadow Hokage. They were rivals. How are they rivals? They probably didn't know each other. They knew each other in passing. Like, oh yeah, I know that guy. Like, oh yeah, look at him. It just frustrates me when people do that. Like, it's like, stop creating your own lore. Okay?
Which has certain implications. Above them
KO.
are the mid-class Saiyans. This class is interesting because in the original manga, there was no such thing as middle class. Only low class, elite, and super elite. Nappa calls himself an elite after all. But through interviews...
Well, at the end of the day, like, I'm sure, like, Akira Toriyama has probably just changed this over time. But at the end of the day, elite and middle class would still be the same thing if there is a super elite.
Toriyama has expanded upon and seemingly replaced the term elite with middle class, and super elite with the simple elite. There are very few Saiyans in this tier, with only around 10 or so according to Toriyama. Nappa and Paragus are two of them, and like I said, Raditz could fit in here depending on how you interpret Toriyama's statement. There are also 10 Saiyans surrounding King Vegeta in the throne room scene of Broly, so I bet these were the 10 middle class Saiyans mentioned by Toriyama. Finally, at the very top of the pyramid are the elite, or super elite as they used
to. So yeah, you got like Vegeta and his dad, but this just more seems like a bloodline trait, because every time I hear Bardock glaze, but he's a low-class Saiyan, but all their hierarchy is based off of your power as you were born, and you can supposedly gain it back up if you just, like, prove yourself. It's just a little weird. Like, I might be missing a big part of the lore. Maybe I should watch the movie, the Bardock movie. I haven't seen it, but still...
to be called. This is the most exclusive of the ranks, with only 2 members, the Prince and King Vegeta.
You know, it'd be embarrassing if, like, King Vegeta had Vegeta as a son, and, like, he was barely measurable. Like, what do you do in that scenario? You just be like, haha, guys, I'm kidding, it's not mine. I lied. I'm King Vegeta. Who's this kid?
This is really the main reason why Elite and Super Elite from the manga don't work with how Toriyama further elaborates, since Nappa shouldn't call himself an elite if there's only the Prince and the King. So maybe that's why Vegeta killed him. Stolen Valor Nappa. So what was the power level range for each?
I don't really, like... So he keeps bringing up that, like, elite thing, and, like, I see his point, but at the end of the day, if there's an elite and a super elite, it shouldn't really matter, because at the end, it's still the exact same as a mid-class, because your super elite's always going to be higher than your elite, so it doesn't really matter.
Class. There's nothing really ever been said, so this is pure speculation. For non-combatants, 0 to 400. I say this because at the start of Z, Goku has a power level of 416, which is lower than what Raditz expected, but still thought he was useful enough. Above that, Leek and Broly notes that Kid Broly's power level is 920, which was already higher than his. For low-class Saiyans, I say 401 to
Yeah, but it's Broly.
2000. Like I said, the Daisenshu mentions the average power level of Saiyans is 1000.
You know what I don't understand about Saiyans is like, when they're like if they're like half Saiyans, they have more potential, supposedly. Like Gohan, for example, had crazy potential, but he ruined his career. But, you know, I kind of respect Gohan. But my point is, how? It doesn't really make sense because the Saiyan blood is what gives you the strength to grow stronger. So if you have half of the Saiyan blood, one would assume you're just never going to be as strong. And it's not like a Viltrumite. I love how they did it in Viltrumite, and I love to see this more, is like, oh, well, our blood and DNA is so strong, you're like 95 or 99% Viltrumite anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I just really like how they did that. It's just a pet peeve of mine, really.
500. And
like, I would have rather seen it with Saiyans and then be like, oh, well, the DNA from the humans give them more of a conscience and more to grow and more emotion, so that's why, but their DNA and their bloodline is almost pure Saiyan, so they have the strength there. If that makes any sense.
most Saiyans are in this category. This would mean that the snipers aiming at Frieza at the start of Broly were at the very top of the low class, or at the very bottom of the middle class. But this range would put Raditz in the low class as well. For middle class Saiyans, I have 2000 to 5000. Nappa, after all, was one of the top Saiyans in his class, reaching 4000 when he fought Goku. Though I extended it to 5000 because Paragus, who was well past his prime, had a power level of 4200 in Broly. This
Yeah, but it's super power leveling, so that's fine.
range could be even
Super power leveling? Even my man Master Roshi has a power level of like over 9,000. Master Roshi, okay, I love what they did with Master Roshi, and that's why I like say, like, don't take super that serious and just enjoy it. Because Master Roshi would have fodderized everyone in Dragon Ball Z if he would have pulled out his buff form. Well, maybe not Boo, but most of them. Even still, it was like, in the manga, Master Roshi was rocking hands with Broly.
higher potentially, since even after
I'm
reading
not Broly. Oh my gosh, why I say Broly? I look like a fraud. Jiren.
Goku's power level
Or may not be Nappa. That's just a theory of mine, though.
of 8000 plus, Vegeta still thinks that they're gonna have a long match. Then there's the Elite, which I have at above 10,000. This one's tricky because there does seem to be a huge gap between the Elite and the middle class, but Vegeta at the start of Z was 18,000, later saying that he far surpassed the King when he was a kid. We don't have any real indication to how strong the King was, but I know someone out there is gonna point out that the
See, I like that a lot. I thought I was going crazy when I watched Z Kai for the first time because I picked it up a little later, probably when I was like 11. I didn't like see it growing up because again, Z came out when I was like not alive. But my biggest point is everyone like that over 9,000. I really don't know where that came from. Maybe it's because Kakarot's power level was growing so high, but still, if like Vegeta was like 18,000, I think he just said, before, like, you know, everything, then why would he be so stressed about over 9,000? I don't know. That's just me, pet peeve of mine. Like, I don't even really know where it came from. Probably the original Dragon Ball anime, like Dragon Ball Z anime, but still.
of the Z Bardock special mentions Bardock getting close to a power level of 10,000 and quickly catching up to the King. But again, this is just in the dub. With that being said, though this power hierarchy is strict, that doesn't mean Saiyans couldn't potentially grow strong enough to get to a higher ranking. I mean, low-class Saiyans getting stronger and stronger due to their life-threatening missions.
But Bardock was so strong, wouldn't he be able, at least a mid-class Saiyan?
Was part of the reason Frieza decided to kill them all. As Toriyama explained, Bardock is in the upper ranks as far as low-class Saiyans go, but he isn't able to become a mid-class warrior. This rank is determined by an innate latent battle power, but naturally, if their battle power rises greatly afterwards, they can be promoted. A Bardock who had been
So Toriyama basically confirmed Bardock wasn't that guy, pal. Bardock was powerful, sure. He was an upper mid rank. I mean, an upper lower rank. But he would get fodderized by Nappa. That's what it sounded like to me.
Stated to have a power level of over 10,000. So it seems like he was never promoted higher up because of societal pressures on planet Vegeta. Or
I don't think that's what Toriyama, like, with Toriyama's statement, it genuinely sounded like Bardock just wasn't that guy, pal. Like, he was like the best of the best lower ranks. And remember, there's only like 10 middle ranks. So that's impressive, sure. But like when you compare him to like Nappa, he probably would have lost. Because like he said, they could get promoted later. And it was in that same statement where he said Bardock was upper lower rank, but wasn't quite enough to be middle rank. So by that logic, he just wasn't strong enough.
Toriyama just never considered Bardock's power to be all that in his head. But we do know now that there was the possibility for vertical movement. This is true the other way around as well. For example, Gine was a low
If only they knew about the back tingles.
class warrior. She was part of Bardock's squad, but she wasn't the best, and Bardock ended up having to save her over and over again. In the end, she stepped back from being a warrior and became a non-combatant. Similarly, Tarbell, Vegeta's brother, should have been born into royalty as an elite, but his power level
Vegeta had a brother?
was a total embarrassment to the king. He likely spent some time on planet Vegeta as normal, probably getting that special training I mentioned earlier, since Vegeta acts as if he knows him to some degree and didn't just see him as a baby. But since Tarbell never got much stronger, the king decided to banish him to a remote world. That's really how cutthroat and sad the system was. Even the king couldn't stomach a low-class son. On the other hand, King Vegeta
You know, especially, I don't know, I kind of understand King Vegeta's thinking. Like, I know he was a bad dude and, like, he was taking money under the table, but, like, when you genuinely deep it, you're the king, your son's, like, a prodigy, and your other son is just so weak that it's just not really even, like, able to be, like, middle class. He's gonna get so much hate, like, so much attacks, and literally just because he's he's part of the royal family, but yet he can't even hang with, like, the Bardock of the world.
was so scared that a Saiyan born to a mid-class father could potentially be stronger than his son that he sent Broly away to die. So maybe Broly could have been classified as an elite if King Vegeta wasn't an asshole. The whole subject of infiltration babies and banishments is kinda crazy considering the Saiyan race was actually really small in numbers by the time Frieza killed them. There were only a few thousand of them, and their life expectancy wasn't great because of how much combat they were in. You think if they spent more time training each other to become mid or elites, then maybe they could have actually stood something of a chance. This brings us back to the first arc of Dragon Ball Z. At its core, the Saiyan saga is a story about breaking free from destiny. It contrasts
Yeah, breaking free from destiny, that, like, so ended, like, 100 years ago. Like, now Super's about, if you're Goku and Vegeta, you get really cool power-ups. And if the fans want power-ups, then your favorite characters like Piccolo and Gohan will get power-ups. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who gets a power-up and who doesn't, because it's always going to be Goku saving the day, but we're not going to tell anyone that because everyone will get mad, especially because everyone's favorite character is Vegeta, but we don't want to let him win for some reason or other, so yeah.
Goku's path of self-determination with Vegeta's pride in his status as a super elite. Saiyan society's rich hierarchy shaped the
But we'll give him a fake win against Jiren's number 2 when everyone knows Top was cool, but like Jiren is like the big bad of the series and Vegeta could barely touch him because, you know, that's Goku's job.
These two warriors in vastly different ways. One saw strength as something earned through effort, while the other believed it was tied to birthright. Yet, as the saga unfolds, it's Goku who proves that greatness isn't dictated by a class or power level, but by the determination to rise above your limitations. The Saiyan saga challenges the idea.
Yet nowadays, Vegeta trains twice as hard and has twice the conviction Goku does. Goku's just like, oh, I want to get stronger. And Vegeta's like, oh, I need to train in 3,000 times gravity. And Goku's like, I want to fight something. And Vegeta's like, if I train in 3,000 times gravity and go through sharks, on fire, then I might catch up to Kakarot. And Goku's like, what does that mean?
That we are bound by the roles we're born into, showing instead that true strength comes from the choices we make and the effort we put into forging our own paths, something Vegeta learns and eventually evolves into. I also have a video explaining how the Bardock special ties into this idea if you want to check it out. I hope you learned something new. Be sure to Gallic gun that subscribe button.
Yep, guys, go check his video out. It was really informative and stuff, and I was just like really wanting to talk about some Dragon Ball, and I use these type of videos to use an excuse to talk about Dragon Ball. That's why this video is probably way longer than the actual video. So my point is, though, like, it's just so messed up on some ways. Like, the power leveling is, oh yeah, effort and all that jazz, but with like Vegeta, he arguably trains harder than Goku. He wants it more than Goku. Goku really doesn't even care about being the strongest anymore. Like, one of my favorite quotes from Goku is, Jiren's like, what drives your strength? And Goku's like, I don't know, I want to get strong, and then stronger than strong. And then Vegeta's like, I need to prove my worth. Pride. Oh my gosh, the Pride speech in Dragon Ball Super is amazing. So yeah, if you guys like this video, please leave a like and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate that. And leave a comment on what you want to see next. Have a nice one.